So, hello, welcome and good afternoon. My name is Andrew Marsh and I'm hosting this Talking Asperger's with Andrew session today, which is going to be a regular Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, where I will be talking about an aspect of Asperger's syndrome and answering questions from the floor for those who would like to ask the questions. I intend this to be a community where we all support and help each other. So if I can help and answer questions and give some advice from my own experience, I'll be happy to do that. If I get stuck with something, I will look it up and get back to you during the week and be able to hopefully answer during that time. So I thought I'd start first of all by saying my wife Leslie, who's on the call, is going to be fielding questions that might happen during my talk, so that if you have any questions during the talk, if you put them in the chat, she'll field those for me and I can get to those after I've finished my little talk. Other than that, she'll try and keep me right because she's good at things like that. So yeah, as I said, I'm Andrew Marsh. I'm 57. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome 6 years ago when I was 51. And I have to say, those two words, Asperger's syndrome, made sense of everything. Everything fitted into place. I felt as though I belonged somewhere, because I didn't feel before that as though I belonged anywhere. I've always felt different. I've always felt that I'm the little green man and everyone else are the human beings. And I just kind of got dragged along or sucked into whatever was going along without actually feeling as though I was part of the group, the family, work situation, or friends. Even friends, sometimes I felt that with this semi sort of paranoid viewpoint that I sometimes have about things, that they were talking about me and they were ganging up on me. And sometimes that happened. And particularly in certain situations at college, I was bullied quite badly and abused at college and various other places. And so I kind of developed my own sense of coping with certain things, and which some people might think quite strange, but self-preservation has an awful lot to do with how we view the world. So that's a bit of an introduction. What I want to do actually first up is to share my screen, and something that I like to do at the beginning of all of my talks is to give you a clinical definition of what Asperger's syndrome is, because I think this will give us some context of where we are. So I'm just going to share my screen. Where's the button? Here we go. And we'll go to, where is it? That one. And this is a clinical definition of Asperger's syndrome. Why isn't that coming up full screen? There we go. Asperger's syndrome is an autism spectrum disorder, one of a distinct group of complex neurodevelopment disorders characterized by social impairment, communication difficulties, and restrictive, repetitive, and stereotypical patterns of behavior. Now, if you haven't come across that definition before, you're probably sitting there thinking, that doesn't sound particularly enticing, this Asperger's syndrome. And I don't like that definition for a number of reasons. But firstly, it uses the word disorder twice. And that kind of implies there's something wrong with you, when actually what I hope to convey in my sessions that we have here on Talking Asperger's with Andrew is there's actually an awful lot right with people who have Asperger's syndrome. They just need the opportunity and the chance to show how good they are at certain things that they excel at. And that's one of the things that I advocate, is that people who have Asperger's syndrome do have super skills. They have a superpower. So that, yes, Leslie?
Can I just ask a question? Sorry, it just came into my head there. Do you think it's because we have an imbalance in the idea of a neurotypical that there are very few people who are actually on the spectrum, when in fact they're undercover, kind of ninja secret? They're all over the spectrum. It's just that the neurotypicals don't have them on their radar.
I think there is that people on the spectrum, we do a lot of masking because we tend to not to want to stand out, because by standing out, we can get picked on. And again, as I said there, our self-defense mechanisms, our self-preservation comes in, and we try to try to hide away, try not to be seen, because if we're not seen, then someone can't pick on us. So as an indication, in the UK, they reckon that about 1% of the population, so that's about 600,000 people, have autism or Asperger syndrome in the UK. It might be slightly higher than that. The figures are coming down as there is a greater understanding of diagnosing and collecting people earlier in the system than in their 50s and 60s, which still happens. So I think there is an element of what you say there, Leslie, is that it actually makes you ask the question, what is neurotypical? Because if you're not sure what neurotypical is, how can you know what neurodivergent is? Because a neurotypical person is completely different from the neurotypical person standing next to them or living in the house next door to them. So trying to put everything into some kind of combined envelope makes you realize it's a very big envelope, and it's not actually an envelope at all. It's a very big spectrum of neurotypical people, as it is for neurodivergent people. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is some of the positive aspects of people who have Asperger syndrome. We tend to focus, and people in society, and certainly some employers, tend to focus on the negative. Their social skills aren't good, they're quiet, or they can be very loud, or they can have issues. And yes, all of those things can be true. They can also be true of neurotypical people who are having a bad day as well. So I want to pick on two particular aspects of Asperger syndrome. First is creativity. This one is close to my heart because I think it's one of my traits. People with Asperger's have distinctive and vivid imaginations, and they can come up with whole new ideas and new ways of doing something because the way that they think is not typical. And by that, they free think, and they tend to ask the what if questions. As I worked as a geologist for 23 years before I knew I had Asperger's, and I would often find myself in meetings or in situations with colleagues, and I'd be saying, why isn't someone asking this question? And the answer is, I don't know. But they say, why aren't you asking it? And I would ask this what might seem to be the daft laddie question, and they would go, why did you ask that? And I say, well, why didn't you ask it? Why aren't you thinking in a different way? Because if we think in different ways and allow ourselves to ask the what if questions, we're going to come up with different answers. And those different answers might be just the thing to move the business forward, to solve a problem that's been going on. It might solve a long-standing problem they've had with their particular business or their company structure. And so all of these tiny little aspects of people on the spectrum having this creativity can be utilized in great areas such as science, engineering, manufacturing, a whole host of employment sectors, and as well as academia, art, music, composition. And the reason I think I have a creative booster to mine is because I love writing stories, and I love writing books, and perhaps I could ask you whether you have an artistic bent or creative bent. Does anyone want to share anything there?
I think I have a sort of a creative bent. It's not, unfortunately, for writing books, because I'm trying to write one at the moment, and it's much more of a struggle than I realised. But I've got, and in fact, the book that I'm writing, as you might know, Andrew, is it asks the question, so what?
Yes.
Because that's the question that I've always asked, and the book is all based around having a scavenger mindset. And in a way, the so what is like the what if, because I've just, well, so what that you don't have the money? So what you haven't got that? So what are you going to do about it? You know, this sort of slightly deviant and challenging questioning, which I've always had in my head. And, you know, so what? Well, so why don't we change it? So what? Why does that matter? So it's interesting. And I wonder whether that's, I mean, I've not heard, I don't know really about Asperger's, but I just find it very interesting that that's something which immediately related to those questioning and sort of looking at things in a different way. I'm not sure how you define creativity, but in terms of original thinking, maybe I might have a bit of it.
Yeah, I agree. It is a very difficult thing to define because, you know, creative people can be the violin virtuoso person. You know, you listen to someone performing music at a high standard, and it absolutely moves me. It can completely move me to tears just listening to the thing. If I was to put on Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries or Holst Planet Suite, I would be sitting here in tears, but I would be enjoying it because I just get moved by someone who has produced something so magnificent. It just connects with me at a very primal level. And I think we all have skills like that, and some of us don't know we have them. And we'll see, you know, how it develops. But I think creativity is something that people have been told not to talk about. When you're in school and you put up your hand because you want to ask a question and the teacher doesn't come to you, they go to someone else, or they don't go to anyone. You want to ask, you're putting your hand up because you want to contribute, you want to ask a question, you want to find out something. And I found at school that in certain circumstances we find that teachers don't want certain pupils to ask things because they're going to ask a tricky question that they don't answer. It doesn't fit into a standard format, a standard answer that they've got in their curriculum. This person's going to ask something that's left field, and that's not what I've got to cover today. I've got to cover these 3 pages out of my manual today, or the exercise book. So we've kind of been taught not to allow ourselves to be creative. And I think giving yourself permission is an important step with that, to allow yourself to be creative and to just go with it, see where it goes, see where this picks up, whether you're picking up a recorder, whether you've got a drum, or whether you just sit and write some poetry, doesn't matter. Just allow yourself to express yourself. And that's one of the things that I try and advocate with employers and with companies, is allow people to do their thing their way. You may have certain rules that you need to apply, certainly, but give someone the freedom to think about how they're doing what they're doing. And you're going to get a better piece of work at the end of it. You're certainly going to have a happier person who feels valued at work. And if there's 2 things that we need more in the workplace at the moment, is we need happier people at work, and we need them to feel valued. You know, if you can move those 2 aspects forward, you're going to move your business forward. And so just allowing someone to ask the what if questions and to free think about what they're doing, you're going to get something good out of it. And it may well be, as I said earlier, that fixing of a long-standing problem that you had with a process or a product, or it might be at the other end of the spectrum where Steve Jobs just decided, we've got these little phones in our hands which can send pictures and can make a telephone call and send text messages. But then we've got the power of the internet, and he put the 2 together because he thought about, it is not just a phone in my hand. It can be something more than that. So he asked the what if question. What if I put the power of the internet into that handheld device? And he changed the way we communicate with each other around the globe. It's quite interesting that. Laura, I was going to ask you about your language and how your language skills are. You know, do you feel as that's the creative aspect of you, that you can speak these 3 languages the way that you can?
You're muted, Laura. You're muted.
Right. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, actually, I think that the creative part about speaking a language, as for me, is trying to imitate native speakers. That's very creative, in my opinion. And it comes to me quite natural. Sure, I spent time enough with you guys, I will start speaking a little bit more of a kind of a Scottish accent, maybe.
Wow. So you mimic. I must admit,
Yeah.
when I was living in France, and I learned to speak French, and I didn't realize that I was learning to speak French in different accents,
Yeah, I can
on
do that.
depending on where I was, because I was living in the south, and learned to speak French in the south. But then I went to Grasse, which is still in the south, but I was working for a Parisian couple. And I came back, I was playing judo at the time, and I came back to judo one night. We went out for dinner after judo. And my friend said, you're speaking French in a Parisian accent, Nate. As, oh, I thought I spoke French in a Scottish accent. But you actually hear it and say it the way that you hear it all the time. So yeah, I get, that you would do that.
Yeah.
That's how it works. I think it's very interesting in a way, but on the other side, it's a limit. For example, as a teacher, I find this as a limit. Why? Because if I spend too much time with my students who can't speak English very well, for example, I may start speaking like them, which is not a good thing for a teacher, right? So I really need to be careful and try to, detach somehow from the teaching experience, and then maybe watch a movie or something on the TV to, clean out my brain from that weird
recalibrate
speaking. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it happens to me also when I speak English with my French friend. If I spend like 1 or 2 days with her and she speaks English with a strong French accent, I will start speaking English with that French accent as well. That happens all the time.
Yeah, Andrew gets very upset with me when my friend comes over from Monaco, and every question is at the end. Are you going to have some tea?
Yeah, right.
The interesting thing is, her friend could have been gone back to Monaco for a month, and Leslie's still doing it around the house, asking me questions with a at the end of it.
I lived there for 5 years. Come on, Damien. What about you? We're kind of leaving you out here. What about you?
I think creativity can be manifest itself possibly in your work or what you do, because I have my job as technical and production manager, but I also do some research into plant diseases, and I enjoy it when I am able to do my my own research and creating my ideas, and when I'm playing around with plants, injecting a different disease or trying to find in the lab to identify a different virus. So I think in that way, when I'm allowed to be creative in my own work, it's I enjoy it. I can be really focused on that one thing and good at it. Outside work, I love music. I play the violin. I take lessons. I've been playing with different groups of people, both here in Spain with the Flamenco artists, and in Scotland with a group in the borders.
That's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's quite a different on the scale of flamenco. Is very.
Yeah, it's very intense. It can be really intense, and that's what I like. You have to really concentrate on each individual bar when you're learning the music, and then you take the music. But then the bit I sometimes find difficult is then you have to forget the music. You have to go with the person singing or the person who leads the flamenco, which sometimes I find difficult because you're not following set rules. You have your set rules and then they change. But
it's a very magical thing, isn't it? It's a story.
I was listening to you there, Damien, and you were talking about doing your thing, being able to do and research the thing the way that you wanted to do it. That must be incredibly fulfilling, particularly when the end result could be a new vaccine or understanding a new virus better. It's not just a piece of work that you can hand over to someone on Friday and you forget about it. What's the next? You're actually producing something really meaningful for society.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, I did some research with a a lady in York in the UK, and we ended up with a paper with a new virus that was specific to watercress, which is interesting because then you understand, you can identify, and then you can come up with control methods. So it was really fulfilling, and I did a master's based on that, which was absolutely fantastic. But my only problem was once it had finished, I wanted to continue.
Yes.
So,
Yes. But that freedom that you had there, you know, it's so important that we get that opportunity and we then make the most of it. I mean, you've come up with a new way of looking at something from a perspective of a plant, but and viruses and vaccines. It's just fascinating. I find that fascinating that you can look at a biological process and lots of quite complex chemical and biochemical information. You can extract from that what you want to look for, and then you go and research that and find it and trial it and test it and produce something that comes with it. I think that's amazing.
yeah, it's very exciting getting down to that level of the plant cell and seeing how it works and seeing how it interacts with the disease, and it's almost like a fight between the disease and the plant has its defenses, and it could go on for hours and hours just talking about how the plant defends itself. It's great fun.
No, it's good though, because it also gives us a different perspective in that it's not just the human animal or, the biological, physiological animal that has viruses. Anything that's alive can have a virus. Even a virus, I assume, can have a virus. Is that possible?
They have their enemies. Yes, they have their enemies.
Yes. So you would use that sort of to go to war against virus kind of thing. There's a Game of Thrones for you.
Well, a lot of things in agriculture use or bacteria against other bacteria, or bacteria against caterpillars, or or using the plant's own defenses, encouraging the plant to defend itself by. So it's
fascinating. Peter, is there anything in what you do would you call creative? Do you want to perhaps share something with us?
I don't know if Peter's left the building.
Not sure if Peter's still there. I'm not sure if he's still there. So I'm going to go. What I'm going to do is I was going to cover a second aspect of the positive aspects of Asperger's, but I just had my 10-minute warning from Zoom for my 40 minutes because I came on a little early to have everyone enter the room. So I was going to open it up to any other particular questions that anyone might want to ask me. So anyone got anything they want to ask? Any observations or anything like that I can help them with? Or you can quiz me on and I can find out something for you. Yes, Claire.
I was going to ask, you said at the beginning that you found ways to cope with this was the bullying and ways to protect yourself. And I'm wondering what strategies you did employ. How did you manage? As a young person, that must be difficult, but if you don't mind me just adding that it's of interest to me, because I think there's lots, I mean, I know this sort of we're talking about what's typical and what isn't, but I see that lots of young people are trying to cope with things at the moment, and I wonder how you did it. How on earth did you cope? What were your strategies?
One of my strategies to deal with the bullies, this might sound incredibly strange for me to say, was I let them do what they wanted to. Because if you let them do it, they'll soon get fed up and tired and go and do something else, and go and either pick on someone else or go and do something else. If you rebelled and fought back, then that was the challenge to them, and they would then pick on you worse. It would get more physical, and that you get hit and beat and kicked and things like that. But if you just went, oh, so what, get over it, I get on with it, and I could carry on doing what I was doing, they tended to forget about you. That didn't always work. Sometimes that failed spectacularly, and the bullying was well, it got to abuse rather than bullying. But I had to try and make a way that would work for myself, so that I tried to remain calm. Trying to keep calm was one of the things, because difficulty remaining calm, because I could lash out, and the lashing out could be quite nasty if I did lash out. I lashed out when I was about 8. A bully in the playground one day pushed me too far, and I lashed out at him and punched him in the face a few times, and he cried, and everyone went into 2 different groups, and that was the end of it. But I kind of realized then that if I didn't control that aspect of it, I could end up getting in an awful lot of trouble. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to let that out, not going to let that intense physical element of me out. And kind of, as I said, I kind of let them get on with it and let them do it. And
why were they bullying? What was it about your behavior, do you think, that so attracted that behavior of them?
I didn't fit in, Claire. I just didn't fit in. I was different. I walked differently. I talked differently. On pain of death, if I didn't have my top button done up and my shirt and my tie neatly tied up and my shoes shined and polished, then my parents would not let me out the house like that, and I would get into trouble with them if I didn't look the part before I left for school. And I just stood out. It's a difficult thing to try and explain, but I just stood out, and I was different, and I would say things that were different, and I used to be quite loud and quite gregarious when I was a kid, until I got that kicked out of me in a way. And I'm far more introvert and quiet now. And I would have kids walk up to me and they would turn an imaginary volume button down on my neck if they thought I was talking too much or talking too loudly. And you kind of shrink away from that kind of being around those kind of people, because you don't want to be part of that. You want to try and save yourself. And so self-preservation, in however that manifested itself, was just trying to get through the day without being too badly hurt physically and mentally. It was the mental pain that was the problem. You could deal with the physical because they were just bruises, but the mental pain was the harder part to deal with.
Peter has just said in the chat that everyone is different and it's important to remember. And possibly the best thing is to take everyone on their own merits.
I completely agree with that, Peter. That's exactly right. We all have something to bring to the table. It doesn't matter what table it is. It doesn't matter who's at the table, but every single one of us has something unique to bring to whatever it is we're doing. It may be a different viewpoint. It may be reinforcing a viewpoint that someone else has said, but they're not confident about it. There'll be all of these things. Everyone has a skill, an ability, and we need to be recognized for having those and being able to express them without fear of reprisal. And yeah, I completely agree with that, Peter. Absolutely. Yeah. Has anyone else got anything else? I don't wish to put any pressure on someone, but I'm being told by Zoom I have 3 minutes left on my call today.
Yeah, we can see that too.
Okay.
One question about not necessarily bullying, but maybe people who enjoy to make fun of other people in meetings, for example, professional meetings. So I find the most difficult part of my work is that when I'm in a meeting with other people, and especially with certain people who might enjoy sort of taking or making jokes at other people's expense. Quite often I don't realize they're joking, but sometimes I find that the meeting is just generally difficult to follow. What necessarily, sometimes what isn't being said as well as what is.
Yeah.
With people who, as I said, who are really keen to joke at other people's expense throughout the meeting.
That kind of says a lot more about them than it does about the person they're talking about. Really, that's a very insecure person.
It does, but people like to feel as though they have control over others by expressing these things and being dominant.
This is it. The person I'm talking about, who is a director of a company, can sometimes he likes to control. He likes and he almost likes to trap people if you say the wrong thing. So it's difficult. I sometimes think, well, I'll ignore a lot of things and just. But it's difficult to manage those situations and not react.
And what you said earlier there just is what's not being said can be more important than what is being said, and I struggled with dealing with that in a work situation. Definitely, I don't get the unwritten rules of social communication. I'm getting better at it, but I still struggle with what's they actually mean by what he's saying, and I don't get that. Yeah, I struggle with that.
Yes, sometimes I'm told, someone says, Damien, that was a joke, by the way, about something someone else is saying. I don't.
Yes, I completely agree.
Yeah, there's a lot of jokes like that people say, and actually they are barbs because they are uncomfortable with someone in the room that they don't understand. And
yeah, people use jokes in ways that can be incredibly cruel at times. Yes. Well, that's my time nearly up for today. I can't believe it's flown so quickly. I'd love to see you all back next week, where I'm going to be talking about another key skill or key trait of people who have Asperger syndrome. But thank you all for coming along. I'm sorry that we got a bit shortened by that's 40 minutes. I can't believe I've gone so quickly. But thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you all again. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Andrew. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.